To keep things on the rails, I'm going to read from the teleprompter. I had a great meeting with President Roman numeral 11. Excuse me, President Xi. This meeting was a total win. Sure, we made agreements about communications, fentanyl, climate change, but most importantly, we got the thing America really needs right now. More pandas. Please welcome Tian Tian. I'm glad we did this, Panda. Now, you and I really aren't so different. We're dads. We're cute. People love sharing videos of us falling down.
Saturday Night Live taking jabs at Joe Biden ahead of his 81st birthday tomorrow, mocking his age in high-stakes meeting with Communist Chinese President number 11, Xi, before getting upstaged by a panda.
Honestly, I don't think it's as funny as the real thing.
No, I agree with you.
I agree. And I saw a better clip than this one.
Fox and Friends host Brian Kilmeade is here to react. But you know, the thing is, Brian, I guess what's noteworthy about it is it's like the green light's been given. You know, Joe Biden's been greenlit. You're allowed to talk negatively. Whether or not it's David Axelrod or SNL, you're allowed to take your shots.
Yeah, great to see you guys. I thought it was also brought up the fact the border crisis, and he ducked it. And they brought up the fact that he's old, and through the questions, the Q&A, that's the way it used to be. I'm not saying this was an hysterical skit, but it was a very interesting way. They used to mock Barack Obama when he blew that debate to Mitt Romney. They used to mock Al Gore as being stiff and robotic. I don't know if they would do that today, but last night was the first time that they actually went to his weaknesses, his age, the border policy, Middle East, and they brought it up. And they said that despite all that, who you're voting for, Donald Trump wants to round up all immigrants and put them into camps. I don't know. The panda says, I don't know. I know I'm breaking down comedy as if it's previewing an NFL game, but I do think it's fascinating because all these things were things that were brought up in the monologue that I think a year ago they wouldn't have touched.
Not even close. So, Brian, what do you make of this moment then? Is it just... is it punditry when David Axelrod says that, or is this a sign? Are we at the precipice of a real change in the fourth quarter of the game here?
You read the Wall Street Journal today. You read David Axelrod, Maureen Dowd, saying that when Joe Biden was told about David Axelrod's comments, he used an expletive. He said David Axelrod was the reason you became vice president. He recommended you. When they tried to get rid of you as vice president and were thinking about bringing in Hillary Clinton, Axelrod said he's done a really good job as vice president. It would be an ultimate act of disloyalty. You should stay. He comes out and says, I think it's for the better of the country. You should consider not running. And you lash out with an expletive and you make him the bad guy. I thought that was fascinating that came from a New York Times columnist. And I think it's fascinating that SNL is doing this, but I don't think they're pushing. I think they're gently nudging for him to think about it. Because the alternatives, did you see the poll, guys? Gavin Newsom is their blue chip kid, and he loses to Trump. And I think he loses to DeSantis and Nikki Haley, too. Nikki Haley wins by 6-7 points head-to-head with Biden. Trump 4 or 5 in every poll. The last 3 major polls were 4, and DeSantis does, too. So you might say push Joe overboard, but there's no layup coming up behind him. It's certainly not the vice president. We've been over that. Gavin Newsom, we know the thing about Gavin Newsom is his report, the back of his baseball card. He's a terrible governor. Oops, he ruined San Francisco, and then his goal is to ruin the state. And I think DeSantis, if he shows up on November 30th, will show that. So what are you going to give me, the Illinois governor? Please. The governor of Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania? I think that state is tipping more red, even though he's been solid and that's been ultimately partisan, but nobody knows him. I don't know if that person could beat any leading Republican. So best of luck. They're going to run on Donald Trump is the worst person in the history of the world, worse than Hitler. They've already said it, and they're going to run on abortion. And I just think there's a vulnerability with Biden right now if they think it, because the window's closing.
I think it's important we talk about his age. It's not really his age. I mean, we had a 100-year-old veteran who had a lot more, lucidity and fluidity in his speech at the Patriot War, going off the cuff. I don't think it's his age. I think it's his competency, and I think we're seeing signs of dementia and just not altogether there. But it's an interesting thing. We'll see what happens. I think Axelrod, Brian, is a sign that Obama, Axelrod is the voice of Obama and Valerie Jarrett, which are the top of the party, and they're saying time to move on. I want to talk about something else, which is your book. I went into my office the other day. You left a copy for me, and as always, with all of your books, my son John Paul snatches them up because he's a history buff. So I haven't gotten to read it yet because he's reading it, and he says it's great, per usual. Tell everybody about the book, because he says it's incredible.
One thing, guys, just keep in mind, I used to think if I got a book to Rachel, it's like giving it to Sean. Evidently, they don't share things, because if I leave out one, the other one gets mad. So I had to quickly, you probably knew that already. But I just want to talk about two leaders in their time. America always seems to have the right person at the right time. And Booker T. Washington was that in the segregated South. And to team with a rich guy, 7 generations of wealth, who had the struggle to live through his childhood, they saw greatness in each other and thought, how do we move our country forward? And I thought if I could chronicle that and just try little by little to win the war on history and counter the narrative that America was never that great, according to Governor Cuomo. And if I could talk about a guy that was born a slave without shoes, slept on the floor his whole life, and found out what a number was when he was 10 years old, when he saw 18. That was the bag he had to fill up with salt every day when he moved to West Virginia as a free man for the first time, a free boy, and then became one of the most important men in American history, and ends up having three presidents speak at the commencement address at Tuskegee. And when I went to these places and talked to these people and talked to the Roosevelt people, I said, is there a relationship here between these two, or is it just me wanting to make this happen? They said, no, absolutely. They wrote about each other constantly. One wrote the foreword to, Teddy Roosevelt wrote the foreword to Booker T's last book. And although they were people of their times, obviously, there were some blind spots that Teddy had. For the most part, he was able to look at a black man as his equal. And Booker T. Washington said, there are things that are in my way. There are people that are going to look at me as less, and I don't care. If you're going to be racist towards me, I don't hate you. I'm going to deal with the people that aren't. And I'm going to convince them by my actions. And when I was reading his book, I would get chills. A little bit angry by the way we were at one point, but chills to see a man overcome everything. He's a mini Norman Vincent Peale, Napoleon Hill, and Anthony Robbins before those guys were all out there.
Brian, it's an awesome story. It's a great book. And if you want to, I mean, watching Brian on stage on tour is a lot of fun. Check it out. Go to briankilmeade.com. You're in Alabama today, New York on November 25th, and New Jersey on the 29th. And I hope folks get tickets right there. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Books on sale right now. Great for Christmas.
Stay within yourself, all of you.
Trying and failing.